Well, good morning and Happy New Year. I figured I'd do something a little different this year where I figure I'd, do an overnight thing, talk about sports and whatnot, talk about my teams and whatnot. If you like to subscribe, you can. So, I'm going to talk about the Giants right off the bat. And all I've seen on social media over the last few days is, the bickering is just beyond, it's like words. Where, I don't know, people are mad that the Giants won. And rightfully, I didn't think the Giants were going to win a game the rest of the way anyway. And I said it a while back that the Colts were a winnable game, regardless of such. And when you look at the, if you looked at the games from the optics standpoint, Indianapolis was just, I didn't understand what Indianapolis was doing. Indianapolis, their defense leads the league in missed tackles. And the next team is not even, they're like 20 or so ahead of the next team. And you saw a lot of missed tackles in that game by their defense. And they made Drew Lock look way better than what they did. I mean, if you look at the Giants running game that day. You take away that 40-yard run by Tyrone Tracy, the Giants couldn't run the ball for shit. Just couldn't. And like I said, they made Drew Lock look like a world beater. $5 million well spent. After a couple weeks ago, people were saying, the Giants lit $5 million on fire for Drew Lock. Between that and then, people want, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll fired. I just think that Joe Schoen should deserve one more year to get this right. Brian Daboll needs to be fired. Yes, Joe Schoen has put this roster together. But it's up to Brian Daboll and his coaching staff to develop these players into quality players. And Brian Daboll has failed to do so. Has failed. Big time. And now we definitely gonna, now the draft is coming up in about 4 months. And yes, the Giants need a quarterback. They need a lot more than that. They need offensive line. They need a cornerback. They need a wide receiver too. They need some linebacker help. They need another pass rusher. They need a lot of work. You got your left tackle, Andrew Thomas. You got your running back, Tyrone Tracy, 1,000-yard from scrimmage. You got your weapon. Now you got your wide receiver one, Malik Nabers. There's your wide receiver one, and he was over 1,000 yards. So you had a rookie duo over 1,000 yards. That was the third time happening in NFL history. And we got Brian Burns and Kayvon. But we need a third pass rusher. And to me, I think Ojulari isn't the answer because he can't stay healthy. If we let him go, it ain't what? Let another team bank on his, take a risk with his injury history. But, I think the Giants are still in a good spot to get Cam Ward. I think they are. And we'll see after this Sunday where they land. I just think Barkley is going to play. And he's going to, once he breaks the record, he's going to sit. And I think the Eagles will be up enough that it won't matter. They'll be up by like double digits. And I don't think the Giants will mount any type of comeback. So with a new system, with a new coach, a new offensive coordinator that is creative, that is with the times. I mean, you look at Brian Daboll. He called the plays this year. Mike Kafka called the plays last year. Where do you see a difference? There was no difference. It actually got worse. I just think Brian Daboll was in over his head. I think he let a lot of shit slide. So it goes to show that with the right coach, and if they fire, I think when they fire Daboll, when they go for a coaching search, get a real coach. Let's not get another coordinator, because if we get another coordinator, it's another Daboll. It's another Daboll with no head coaching experience. Get someone with head coaching experience and get an offensive coordinator that is young, that is bright, and that can actually have some creativity and get scheming these receivers open. So that's how I see it. And the bickering on fucking social media is so it doesn't fucking matter. It's fire Shane and Daboll. Why did we win Sunday? We could have the number one spot. You know what? Let New England have the number one spot, because they're going to take Travis Hunter. And I'd rather not get Shedeur Sanders, because I think him and his daddy will be a package deal. I think he wants to go to the Raiders. I think he does. And I think if he does that, I think his dad is going to coach there. Because Antonio Pierce is done. I think he is completely done in Vegas. But I just think the Giants will be fine. They will be fine. It's just a slow process. Everyone is saying, this could be another 4 more years. It set them back. No, it didn't. You get the right coach and the right philosophy and the right culture and get their minds right. We can turn this around quickly. And that's where it begins. It begins with the coaching and the player development and the right mentality. And that's how you turn it around quick. And I think it can happen with this team next year. And the turnaround won't be as slow as everyone thinks it's going to be. I think it's going to be within 2 years. Next year, seriously, you think next year they're going to win 3 games again? I don't think so. If they can win about 6 or 7, it's a start. And then you build from there. But I just think that getting the right quarterback in place and getting the right people around him and the right scheme, I think it's a step. It's a building block right there. That's how I see the Giants right now. And you know what's going to happen? You know what's going to happen Sunday. The moment that Barkley breaks the record, they're all going to pounce on Shane about letting him leave. But think about this. Look at Derrick Henry in Baltimore. Do you hear anything do you hear anything from Tennessee on how their general manager let him walk? Do you hear anyone from that? Do you hear anything from the mainstream media on their general manager getting ripped to fucking shreds? Look at Josh Jacobs. He broke the record for 7. He had a 7 straight week with a rushing touchdown. Do you see the Raiders general manager get ripped to shreds by social media and by the media? Do you see that? No, you don't. And just because we did Hard Knocks, Joe Schoen did exactly what he was going to fix the offensive line because there was no excuse for Daniel Jones. And in the first few weeks before Andrew Thomas went down, Daniel Jones had no excuse. But then on top of that, Brian Daboll and I think it was more Daboll than Schoen disrespected him by dropping him to the fucking practice squad. Ridiculous. And what do you think? And I wouldn't blame him that Daniel Jones went to John Mara for his release instead of Schoen. Because you know damn well that Daniel Jones watched Hard Knocks and everything that they said. But, it was no excuse for Daniel Jones. Joe Schoen addressed the offensive line, like he said. And before Andrew Thomas went down, the offensive line was fine. The sacks were down. This was all on fucking Daniel Jones. But then again, player development's fucking pathetic. I mean, look at the draft picks. Look at last year's draft. Deonte Banks was fine in year one. He's been awful year two. Who else? John Michael Schmidt. He's just another guy. He hasn't improved. You look at Jalen Hyatt. Jalen Hyatt had some sort of flashes in year one. This year, everyone said out of camp, he's going to have a good year. He's improved and whatnot. He can't even get on the field. And he can barely get targets. So, what is coaching and play? What are these coaches doing? Are they developing these players? And I don't want to fucking hear practice. If you keep making mistakes over and over and over again, how are you improving? If you're making the same mistakes each and every fucking week. It's ridiculous. And I don't even blame the injuries. The injury bug, I don't blame injuries. The next man has to come up, but that's the thing. I mean, this year's draft was pretty good. Malik Neighbors, solid. He was dinged up. Tyler Nubin, he was all right until he got dinged up. Drew Phillips is, he's your slot corner, no matter what. Theo Johnson was starting to, get better, and then he got hurt. Tyrone Tracy, improved. And, between him and Neighbors were the two. And I think they're gonna I think next year they're gonna get better. And that's how I think they're, once Barkley walked, and once they got a running back in there, that, is solid. And we have a good, now we need a third back, because Eric Bray is not the third back, sorry. He just have, you get him, you get Tracy, maybe you get someone in the draft in round 4 or 5, and you got Singletary. And then you get a fourth one. But this year's draft is going to be huge because you get that quarterback, and then you get your cornerback. You get a cornerback one because you desperately need a lockdown corner, and then you build, and then you get offensive line help, and then you get a pass rusher. because I don't think Ojulari will be signed. I'd be shocked. I'd be surprised if he gets signed because as much as people like him, he just can't stay healthy. So that's how I think about the Giants. And that's about it for this evening. I might talk about the Nets tomorrow night. I mean, I think the future for the Nets are bright. I believe 31 draft picks until 2031. I think Cam Thomas, once he's back to full health, I think he's just gonna be a superstar. He can score, and I like Jordi Fernandez. I really do. He's making the most of that squad, even though everyone wants him to tank so we can get that, but we got 3 first-round picks next year. We're going to be fine. And Jordi Fernandez doesn't pull punches, but he gets the most out of those guys. And I really appreciate that. And I think it's just going to get better for him. With draft picks next year and in our cap space, we're going to be fine. So that's it for this morning. Happy New Year to everyone. Time to go to sleep.